Hey, seniors, we're about to knock out book 4 of The Plague, start on book 5. So we're down to the last 2 videos I'm going to make for this. We're going to make this one, and then I'm going to make the ending of book 5, which is relatively short. So I think we can get both of them done today. And then we'll be done with The Plague, and we'll be ready to move on with British literature as we begin that. And so I know a lot of you are excited about getting done with The Plague, and I think starting Beowulf will make you wish we were still doing The Plague, to be honest with you. But we'll see how you do. You know, some people really like Beowulf, so I think you guys are ready for a break, though, from this for sure. So let's see how we start to get to a close, all right? So we start off on page 258 in the book, and I think those of you who have the book that I've seen, you are all using pretty much the same version, so that's helpful with page numbers. 258, they talk about, you know, now things are starting to really get bad for these people. It says the only thing for us to do was to go on waiting, and since after too long waiting, one gives up waiting, the whole town lived as if it had no future. There's people that just don't see an end in sight of this plague, and they feel like, well, this is never going to stop, so why are we... why even care at this point? So they're just going through the motions. Honestly, they're just going day to day, seeing what moments they get. And if they die, they die. They're pretty upset. The next plot point we get is Monsieur Othon, who remembers the magistrate whose son died violently from the plague, is set to be released from quarantine. And for whatever reason, they don't let him out. There's a mix-up with paperwork or something, and he's forced to go back to quarantine. And initially, you would think, based on, you know, who this guy is, and he's an important figure, that he might be upset about that. He's not. He seems to just take it placidly, like it's no big deal. Now, his wife goes to the you know, whoever's in charge of this, whatever, you know, red tape bureaucrat, and she pitches a hissy fit, but he still doesn't get out. In fact, when he does get out, he says he wants to go back. And these are not nice, remember. He wants to go back because he says he feels like helping and doing things there helps him stay busy. It helps him keep his mind off of things, and it allows him to be closer to his son who's passed away. And it just feels like that's all he's got. You know, it goes back to our little maxim we have here about do the maximum good in the space you're provided. And that's what he wants to do. He wants to find a way to do that very thing. We get to catch up on some of our main characters. Othon's not. He is a minor character who serves some important parts. But we see Cotard is just thriving. I mean, the plague is at its zenith right now. It's at the worst possible level for it, which I know is kind of not the way you define zenith, but at its height, okay? And he's doing great, but we see our other characters starting to struggle. Gron actually is getting sick. And he's found... looking at we're around Christmas time when this part takes place, and they find him looking in a window at a Christmas store, and he just has a meltdown. Let me read you kind of the what you think about when you think of Christmas right now. Now, those of you who know me know that is my absolute favorite time of the year. I live for it. I'm already seeing little bits and pieces of it showing up here in August in some stores, and while most of you probably have you little meltdowns and talk about how it's not even Halloween or Thanksgiving, you start all that up. I don't have those problems. I'm thrilled. Okay, I love everything about it, and what it comes down to for me is the lights, the fact that people are actually, you know, for the most part, treating each other better. It's supposed to be cold. It's cold in some places, not here. And I love the cooler temperatures. You know, you get that little bit of break from work or school. You get to see family. Just everything that, you know, really I love about that time period. You know, it's just everything. The TV shows that are on are really nostalgic. It makes me think back to when I was a kid. So everything about it's awesome. So their description of the way these people see Christmas just hurts me worse than the description of the plague, to be honest. Let me read this to you. We're on page 260, by the way. It says, indeed, Christmas that year had none of its old-time associations. It smacked of hell rather than of heaven. Empty, unlighted shops, dummy chocolates or empty boxes in the confectioner's windows, streetcars laden with listless, dispirited passengers. All was as unlike Christmas tides as it well could be. In the past, all the townspeople, rich and poor alike, indulged in seasonable festivity. Now only a privileged few, those with money to burn, could do so, and they caroused in shamefaced solitude in dingy back shops or private rooms. In the churches, there were more supplication than carols. You saw a few children, too young to realize what threatened them, playing in the frosty, cheerless streets. But no one dared to bid them welcome in the God of former days, bringer of gifts, and old as human sorrow, yet new as the hopes of youth. There was no room in any heart but for a very old gray hope, that hope which keeps men from letting themselves drift into death and is nothing but a dogged will to live. So not a lot of very happy Christmassy images there. And then we also, if you skip over to the next page, 261, you kind of get it summed up, a really important thing. And this is when Ryu finds Gron, and we just see him having a meltdown in front of one of these windows, which is probably what I would be doing at this point, to be honest with you. I'm already worried as we get into closer and closer to Christmas. And I realize it's August, so we've still got September, October, and November to go through. But, I mean, I'm already wondering what coronavirus is going to do to it. And, yes, I realize that's a petty thing to be concerned about, but, you know, we all get those petty moments, I suppose. So listen to this. It says, "A loveless world is a dead world, and always there comes an hour when one is weary of prisons, of one's work, and of devotion to duty. And all one craves is for a loved face, the warmth and wonder of a loving heart." So what they've come to decide is that Gron's just having a meltdown because, you know, he's given so much, he's done so much to help, and he's got nothing himself. He's got no one. He's got his friends, but, you know, his wife left him, and he's just getting that point where a lot of people do at Christmas. Why suicides are so high at Christmas time, because people think about their loved ones and they don't have them around, and that's what happens to Gron here. Ryu sees him looking through the window, and when he gets close, he touches him and realizes that, he's burning up with fever. So they're worried that this might be plague with him. So Ryu does something he hasn't done yet. He breaks with protocol and decides that since Gron really has no family, that they're going to him and Teru are going to watch over him. And they decide to do that very thing. In a fever fit, Gron has Ryu remind him the manuscript he's been working on. You know, the one we talked about earlier that he'd written like a sentence or two of, and he kept changing every little word, you know, wanting to get the exact right descriptions. He asks Ryu to read it. Ryu does. Gron just is like, "It's terrible, throw it in the fire, burn it," and Ryu does. At that point, they assume that Gron's not going to survive the night. Yet something weird happens, and this is the beginning of a really big turn in our story here. Now, I would still argue we're in falling action at this point, but you can disagree. I think we are, and I think, you know, falling action is still action. Remember that. Okay, so Gron does survive, though. They think he's going to die. He comes back, and more than that, as Chapter 4 ends, or Book 4 ends, we see the rats returning. Now, you might think that's a scary thing, but remember, the plague got worse when they were gone. The fact that they're coming back kind of hints that maybe the plague is about to be on the wane, okay? All right, let me pull up my Book 5 notes, because we're actually doing Book 5, Sections 1 and 2 today as well, part of the reading. So, all right, let me pull it. Here we go. All right, so we get into Section 1 of Book 5. So now we're definitely into the ending parts of the book. There's not a lot left. There's a whole 308 pages, and we're on 269. So we got about 40 pages left. So 269, initially, there's a lot of hesitance. You know, you think, okay, maybe things are getting better, but there's still this, like, do we celebrate and then get our hearts broken, or do we just see what happens? It says, "One of the signs that a return to the golden age of health was secretly awaited was that our fellow citizens, careful though they were not to voice their hope, now began to talk in it is true, a carefully detached tone of the new order of life that would set in after the plague." So they actually are considering the future now, like what's going to happen next, because they are, in fact, realizing that maybe this is actually going to end. Man, I'm looking forward to that day for us with coronavirus, man. Right now, I just don't know. But when we do start seeing numbers drop, and we do see things starting to get really back to normal, we're not there yet. Man, that's going to be a great day. Now, sadly, though, and this is one of the kind of disturbing things about this book, but this book is very realistic, okay? I want you to understand, happy endings with something like the plague are just not a possibility. So we start seeing there's still people dying, okay? It's getting less, but people still die. One of them, in fact, is Monsieur Othon, who does pass away working at one of these camps. But he's doing what he wanted to do as he passes away. So I guess kind of the way he wanted to go out. One of the things that Camus is really good about doing, both in this and in the very last section of Book 5, is dictating that these people didn't beat the plague. We have to understand that this plague, every time it's disappeared in all of history, it's just kind of faded. Whatever reason, it just, ran out of hosts or whatever, but it's not because of any medicine or anything anybody came up with. I think when President Trump talks about coronavirus is just going to go away, I think that's where that kind of mentality comes from. I don't think it's ignorance. I think it's just the idea that a lot of these types of things, that's exactly what happens. Of course, the problem is that this plague leaves after it kills a massive percentage of people, and that's not what we want, right? I hope. Okay, so 271 is where this comes up. He says, let me find it. It said, it is doubtful if this could be called a victory. All that could be said was that the disease seemed to be leaving as unaccountably as it had come. Our strategy had not changed, but whereas yesterday it had obviously failed, today it seemed triumphant. Indeed, one's chief impression was the epidemic had called a retreat after reaching all its objectives. It had, so to speak, achieved its purpose. So it's like we're doing the same thing we were months ago, and it works now, not because all of a sudden it works, but because the disease has done what it wanted to, and it's out of here. One of the kind of positive moments we do see that in this time period where there's still a lot of hesitance and a lot of depression is to just finally get this little bit of hope. It says, indeed, it could be said that once the faintest stirrings of hope became possible, the dominion of the plague was ended. So they're pointing out that that's when you finally beat the plague, is when hope returns, which it does. And along with hope, some other weird things begin. We see noticeable changes in town. The prices on food and things start dropping because, again, not because they have more supply, but because they think we're finally going to be able to get supplies back. So, let's unload some of this stuff. They get to the point where the number of new cases just falls off, and they decide that they're going to keep the town locked down for another 2 weeks just to be sure. And even then, some people are like, I don't know. It says, no doubt these families had hopes, but they hoarded them and forbade themselves to draw on them before feeling quite sure they were justified. And this time of waiting in silence and exile, in a limbo between joy and grief, seems still crueler for the gladness all around them. It's like some people are still like, I don't know, I just don't trust it. I mean, it's that bad to get, you guys know what that's like to be let down when you think something great's going to happen and then it doesn't. And so that's what's happening in this town. But hey, a cool little note, especially for me. Those of you who know me know how much I love cats. So we get this image that the cats have returned to the town. The rats are back, the cats are back. So now we have the town really starting to return back to normal, which is really kind of cool. All right, so section 2, last part of this. We're going to have a pretty short video, which was what I was kind of looking for. With the plague showing regression, we see a similar regression in Cotard, who, remember, was excited about the plague. Now that the plague is no longer a thing, he's upset. So it says Theroux's writing becomes a little scattered and disjointed, going between Cotard, Grand, and random observations about people in town. But he seems to focus a lot on Cotard, who is distraught that the plague is receding so rapidly. He's actually hoping it's just a dip and it's going to pick up and get worse again, which is, wow, okay. But he grills Ryu, hoping that there will be some sense, because he's hoping the doctor is going to give him a little bit of pessimism, that, this could bounce back. We can't be too excited, because he needs that. Otherwise, he's going to come unglued. So it says that at this point, Cotard points out that he thinks once the gates open, he's going to be arrested. He goes into hiding. And our main characters occasionally will see him out and about. He's always doing something very suspicious. He even says something suspicious about accidents will happen, won't they? Like, this guy's trying to actively keep the plague going, which wouldn't shock me, to be honest with you. Page 280, which is the end of the section. This is a very short section. Cotard says something really interesting, or the narrator points it out. It says, they're talking about the plague disappearing. It says the plague was bound to leave traces anyhow in people's hearts. They're trying to tell him, well, the plague's never going to go away. It'll still be a part of who people are. To this, Cotard rejoined curtly that he wasn't interested in hearts. Indeed, they were the last thing he bothered about. So once again, if you didn't know Cotard's a bad guy, there you go. I mean, he's definitely that. At this point, we see two men come wandering around looking for Cotard, and they look like government men, and he splits. He takes off and runs off and hides, and when we do see him again, guys, near the end of the book, it will not be good. So his disappearance, that's gonna end very unhappily, okay? So that gets us through section 2. We have sections 3, 4, and 5, and then we're done. So one more video, and it's going to be a mixture. It's a bittersweet mixture of good and bad. So I'm looking forward to finishing this up with you guys. I'm going to stop this so we can end this recording, and I'm about to run right into the next one, and we'll finish this book up. So thank you guys for your time, and thank you for your attention. I know at the time I'm filming this, very few of these videos have actually been watched. Those of you who did, thank you. There were those of you who didn't, man, I hope you get lucky on that test. All right? So anyway, guys, thanks a lot for the time, and we will see you back here in just a few minutes.